1998. Two young men walk into Yahoo's office in Silicon Valley. They're both 25 years old. They're wearing casual shirts and jeans. They look nervous. They're about to make an offer, sell their small search engine company for $1 million. Yahoo's executives listen to the presentation, then they laugh. "Why would we buy your search engine?" they ask. "We already have one. And besides, we don't want people to leave our site too quickly. We want them to stay and see our ads." Larry Page and Sergey Brin walk out of the meeting. They feel embarrassed. They feel rejected. But they don't know something important yet. Yahoo just made the biggest mistake in internet history. Larry Page and Sergey Brin were PhD students at Stanford University in 1998. They were studying computer science. They were smart, but they weren't rich. They weren't famous. They lived in cheap apartments. They ate cheap food. They worked in a friend's garage because they couldn't afford an office. Their company was just a research project that got too big. But Larry and Sergey had a problem. Their search engine was using too much of Stanford's internet bandwidth. The university told them they needed to move it somewhere else. They needed money. They needed it fast. So they decided to do something that sounds crazy now. They tried to sell Google. If you want to improve your English through real business stories like this one, you're in the right place. This is how you learn naturally through stories that actually happened. This is the story of how two college students built the most powerful search engine in the world. But it didn't start with billions of dollars. It didn't start with a plan to dominate the internet. It started with rejection. It started with companies saying no, thank you, over and over again. Yahoo said no. Excite said no. AltaVista said no. Everyone said no. Today, Google is worth over $2 trillion. Yahoo, it sold for less than $5 billion in 2017. This is the story of the biggest no in business history. In 1995, Larry Page visited Stanford University for a weekend tour. He was thinking about going there for his PhD. A student named Sergey Brin was assigned to show him around campus. They argued about everything. Larry thought one thing, Sergey thought the opposite. They disagreed about politics, about technology, about almost every topic they discussed. But something interesting happened. They both loved arguing. They both loved solving difficult problems. By the end of the weekend, they realized they thought the same way about the important things. 1 year later, they were both PhD students at Stanford. They started working together on a research project. The project was about search engines. Everyone else thought search was boring. In 1996, most search engines were terrible. If you searched for university, you might get millions of random results. Nobody knew which results were good and which were garbage. Larry had an idea. What if you ranked web pages the same way academic papers are ranked? In academia, an important paper is one that many other papers cite and reference. What if web pages worked the same way? A good web page would be one that many other web pages link to. Larry called this idea PageRank, named after himself, Larry Page. Sergey loved the idea. They started building it together. They worked day and night. They filled Larry's dorm room with cheap computers. The computers were so loud that Larry's roommate moved out. The search engine worked amazingly well. It was fast. It was accurate. It gave you exactly what you wanted. They called it Backrub at first. Yes, really, Backrub. Terrible name. But there was a huge problem. Their search engine was eating up half of Stanford's internet bandwidth. The university's network was slowing down because of their project. They were using too much power and too much space. Notice how Larry and Sergey explained complex ideas in simple terms. That's the kind of clear communication that works in real business, and that's great English. In 1997, Larry and Sergey realized something important. They needed to make this a real business. They couldn't keep running it from a dorm room. Stanford was getting angry about the bandwidth problem. They registered the domain name google.com in September 1997. Actually, this was a spelling mistake. They meant to write Google. That's a mathematical term for the number 1 followed by 100 zeros. But they spelled it wrong when they registered the domain. By the time they noticed the mistake, they liked Google better. Sometimes the best decisions happen by accident. In 1998, they moved their operation to a friend's garage in Menlo Park, California. Susan Wojcicki, who later became CEO of YouTube, rented them the space for $1,700 per month. They had a few computers, a ping pong table, and a blue carpet. That was their office. They hired their first employee, Craig Silverstein, another Stanford student. He got employee number 3. Employee number 3, who were employees 1 and 2. Larry gave himself employee number 1. Sergey took employee number 2. They were building a company, but they had no idea what they were doing. They had no business plan. They had no revenue. They had no investors yet. They just had a search engine that worked better than anything else. But working better doesn't pay the rent. By mid-1998, they were desperate. Google was getting more popular every day. More people were using it. More universities were linking to it. But popularity doesn't pay bills. They needed money. They needed it urgently. So they did what seemed logical. They tried to sell Google. They contacted every major internet company they could find. First, they went to Excite. Excite was one of the biggest portals on the internet. Larry and Sergey offered to sell Google for $1.6 million. Excite said no. Your search is too good, they said. Too good? Larry and Sergey were confused. Yes, Excite explained. If people find what they want immediately, they'll leave our site. We need people to stay and click on ads. Then they went to Yahoo. This was the big one. Yahoo was the king of the internet in 1998. Everyone used Yahoo. It was worth billions of dollars. Larry and Sergey sat in Yahoo's conference room. They were nervous but excited. Yahoo was huge. Yahoo was powerful. If Yahoo bought Google, all their problems would be solved. They explained how their search engine worked. They showed how it was faster and more accurate than anything else. They explained PageRank. The Yahoo executives nodded politely. They seemed interested. Then Larry made the offer. We'll sell Google to you for $1 million. It sounds like a lot of money, but for Yahoo it was nothing. Yahoo was worth billions. 1 million was pocket change. The answer came quickly. No, thank you. Yahoo already had a search engine. They had licensed it from another company. Why would they pay $1 million for something they already had? But there was another reason. Yahoo didn't want people to find things too quickly. Their business model was about keeping people on Yahoo's site as long as possible. More time meant more ads, meant more money. A good search engine that gave instant, perfect results, that was actually bad for Yahoo's business. Let people search for a while, let them click around, let them see more ads. That was Yahoo's strategy. Larry and Sergey walked out of the Yahoo building in shock. They had been rejected. Their search engine, the best search engine in the world, wasn't worth $1 million to anyone. They tried a few more companies. AltaVista said no. InfoSeek said no. Every major internet company rejected them. Nobody wanted to buy Google. Nobody saw the value. Nobody understood what they had built. Finally, Sergey said something important. Maybe we shouldn't sell. Maybe we should build this ourselves. Larry agreed. But they had a massive problem. They had almost no money left. They couldn't pay rent much longer. Then something unexpected happened. A Stanford professor introduced them to Andy Bechtolsheim. Andy was one of the founders of Sun Microsystems. He was rich, he was smart. He understood technology. They met Andy early one morning. They showed him Google. They explained how it worked. Andy asked a few questions. Then he said, "This is great. I want to invest." Andy wrote them a check right there on the spot. The check was for $100,000. But there was a funny problem. The check was made out to Google Inc., a company that didn't exist yet. Larry and Sergey couldn't cash the check until they officially incorporated Google. They kept that check in a drawer for 2 weeks while they did all the legal paperwork to create the company. This is where English becomes powerful, when you tell a story about rejection that turned into triumph. Simple words, powerful meaning. With Andy's money, plus investments from family and friends, Larry and Sergey raised about $1 million by the end of 1998. They officially incorporated Google on September 4, 1998. They decided to do something radical. They would build Google themselves. They wouldn't sell it. They wouldn't compromise their vision. They would create the best search engine in the world, even if nobody else believed in it. At first, the strategy seemed to work. Google grew quickly. By 1999, they were handling 500,000 searches per day. By 2000, they were doing 100 million searches per day. The growth was explosive, but they still had a problem. They had no revenue. Search was free, users loved it. But love doesn't pay the bills. They needed a business model. They needed to figure out how to make money. In 2000, they launched AdWords, a system where businesses could pay to show small text ads next to search results. The ads were simple, relevant, and useful. Users didn't hate them. Businesses loved them. Everything changed. Google started making money, a lot of money. By 2001, Google was profitable. By 2004, they went public. The company was suddenly worth $23 billion. Larry and Sergey were billionaires before they turned 35, and Yahoo. In 2002, just 4 years after rejecting Google, Yahoo tried to buy them again. This time, Google's price was $3 billion. Yahoo said it was too expensive. By 2008, Google was worth more than $200 billion. Today, Google is worth over $2 trillion. It's one of the most valuable companies in human history. More than 8.5 billion searches happen on Google every single day. That's more than one search for every person on Earth. Larry Page and Sergey Brin went from sleeping in cheap apartments to becoming two of the richest people in the world. Their personal wealth reached tens of billions of dollars each. Google didn't just become a company, it became a verb. People say Google it when they mean search for it online. The company that nobody wanted to buy for $1 million became too big to imagine. And Yahoo, the company that laughed at the $1 million offer, sold itself for $4.48 billion in 2017. That sounds like a lot until you remember, they could have bought Google for $1 million in 1998. This story teaches us something powerful about rejection and vision. Larry and Sergey didn't succeed because everyone believed in them. They succeeded because they believed in themselves when everyone else said no. Whether you're building a business, starting a career, or chasing a dream that seems impossible, rejection is part of the journey. Every successful person has heard no more times than yes. The difference between success and failure isn't avoiding rejection, it's what you do after rejection. Do you quit, or do you keep building? Yahoo saw a search engine, Larry and Sergey saw the future. Sometimes the biggest opportunities look worthless to people who can't see what you see. Sometimes the experts are wrong. Sometimes the best decision is to ignore everyone else and trust your vision. Stories like this are how you really learn English, not from textbooks, but from real decisions that changed the world and created history. Yahoo rejected Google for $1 million. Today, Google is worth $2 trillion, and Yahoo is gone. Sometimes the most expensive word in business is no. Sometimes the people who laugh at you today will regret it tomorrow. Larry and Sergey heard no from every major company in Silicon Valley. But they kept building anyway. Have you ever been rejected by someone who later realized they were wrong? Maybe a job that said no, a school that rejected you, or someone who didn't believe in your idea. Share your story in the comments. I read everyone. And if you want more real business stories to improve your English naturally, subscribe for new videos every week. Real stories, real English, real inspiration.